Welcome everyone to tonight's session on Fueling for Performance, which is the latest in the LGFA Player Development webinar series for this year. So I am delighted to be joined tonight by Sharon Courtney, who is going to host mostly and facilitate tonight's session. So I'm sure most people will be familiar with Sharon in some guise or another. She obviously has huge success on the field, both with her home club, Dunnamoyne, and with her county in Monaghan down through the years, both on, I suppose, collective level and an individual level. But off the field, Sharon is also a qualified nutritionist and has lectured in this field for many years. So we're absolutely delighted to be joined and welcome Sharon to tonight's session. So welcome, Sharon.
Thank you very much.
No bother. And if we just flick on to the next slide there. So before I pass over to Sharon for tonight, just to run through, I suppose, some of the stuff that we're going to cover. So firstly, Sharon's going to look at performance strategies, then fueling for training and performance. There will be a quick stop then on hydration and then on to some tips for both players and coaches. So I know that people had a chance to, I suppose, enter any questions that they had, or one thing that they were maybe hoping to gain whenever you went through the registration process. And lots of different bits and pieces came up. I know some of them have already been covered and will be covered in tonight's session. We were even talking before, say, the room entered or opened around, is there such thing as maybe too many carbs, especially pre-match? How do you deal with fueling during specific growth spurts or particularly if you're a teenager, and how do you maybe fuel as well for not just training and performance, but also a key element of that that is often forgotten is recovery. So hopefully Sharon will be able to touch on some of those as well as we go to tonight's session. But if not, as I say, please feel free to use the chat throughout and we'll hopefully get to any questions at the end that aren't answered throughout the content. So Sharon, thanks again, and I'll hand over to you there now.
Grant, thank you very much, Ailish. Okay, hello everybody. So Ailish is after taking you through a few bits, but the title here we have is Fueling for Performance. And look, I'm very conscious that um there's a lot there on the screen, and we could stretch these out and we could maybe skip over them or go really brief with some and go into a lot of detail with others. But I'm still a player myself, and I kind of know what players need to know. So I hope I've the information and enough bite-sized information there for people to pick up on. It's not going to be too complicated. And I'm also a coach as well, so I've included a few things there just to help the coaches, because look, it's coaches are the ones that are dealing with the girls a lot of times. And I know we've probably parents on the call, so parents feel free to throw in a few questions as well if needs be. But we have there what we're talking about is performance nutrition or fueling for performance. And the key thing with performance is, well, what is it first off? And ultimately, our performance is, can we do our best effort? So, like, all of us have something that we're able to do on the pitch. So it's somebody's job to get up and down the pitch. It's somebody else's job to put the ball over the bar. It's else's job to be the tight cornerback that wins the ball out in front every time. And it's somebody else's job maybe to do all three of those things. But for me, performance is your ability to repeat that trick. So whatever your trick is, can you repeat that for 60 plus minutes? And if you're somebody here now at the beginning and you're reflecting, you're saying, do you know what? I can do this, but I gas out maybe at halftime, or I always feel I'm lagging before the match finishes. But then maybe, your performance isn't up to scratch, and we can maybe put a few things in place to help that. But our nutrition and performance nutrition, it doesn't have to be fancy. It is a really, really simple thing. And it's just about applying eating strategies to promote all of these things I've listed here. And not to make it too complicated, but the first thing there we have is good health. And if we just eat the correct types of foods and eat what I'm going to talk you through now here this evening, like eating the rainbow or eating loads of getting loads of vitamins and minerals into us, straight away we're going to be healthy. And if we're healthy, we're automatically going to be a better player. So if you think that if you're not picking up colds and flus, you're not picking up silly injuries, you're going to be available for training and you're going to be available for selection. And if you're available for training, you're automatically going to be a better player. So that's the first thing there for just promoting that good health. Now, as players, a lot of times we don't really care about that. We're kind of, I need to perform, I need to get to training, I need to improve, improve, improve. And that improvement is actually the adaptation to training. So we all go to training to get fitter, to get faster, to get stronger. But we actually can't maximize our ability to get fitter, faster, or stronger without eating the correct types of foods. So what we need to do is, well, can I eat the correct types of foods to allow me to train hard, i.e. perform at training? Because ultimately, look, we can all go to training, but do we actually push on at training? So what the food does, it actually allows us to perform at training, so pushing on at training. What happens when we push on at training? Well, we get fitter. And if we can repeat that, i.e., we eat correct types of foods to allow us to recover between training sessions, means we come back the next day and I can push myself again. I'm able to perform again. And what happens over time is that if I push myself at training, great, I get that little bit fitter. And I repeat it again the next time, fantastic, I get a little bit fitter. And I repeat it the next time, well, then my fitness levels start to go up and up and up. But you'll all see this, players, coaches, you'll see this. You'll have a squad of 25, 30 players, and they're all doing the same training, but there's some girls that don't progress. And maybe the reason they're not progressing is because they're not eating the correct types of foods away from the pitch. And that's the challenge that the players here themselves need to reflect on. Well, Jesus, I am doing this, but I never seem to get fitter, or I can't seem to get any stronger, or I never get faster. So perhaps if you are doing the training and things aren't changing for you, i.e., you're not adapting to the training, maybe we need to look at what are we actually eating away from the pitch to allow us to do all of these things here. And look at what comes hand in hand with that then is if we actually can recover between our sessions and food helps us to do that, we are at a reduced risk of getting injured. And I'll talk to you a little bit later on, maybe about how do we get that little bit stronger. So a bit of strength training, and that as well is going to help us to prevent injuries. So nutrition has a huge role to play in allowing us to get that little bit stronger. I have here at the end then just the ideal body composition, okay? And I'm not going to dwell too much on this, but ultimately what we have is if we eat like a Gaelic footballer and we train like a Gaelic footballer, we are going to get the body composition of a Gaelic footballer, whatever that may be, okay? So that's really, really important. Don't get bogged down by the scales or I need to be X, Y, and Z. What you need to focus on is I focus on my training, I'm consistent with training, I'm consistent with the diet, body comp will look after itself. How could it not? Okay. And that's really, really important. So pick up a few tips here to help you with the nutrition side of things. Listen to your coaches away from or listen to your coaches when you're out at your training sessions. The coaching, the training, and the nutrition go hand in hand. And this here then will look after itself. So a few things then just from a performance nutrition perspective or sports nutrition, whatever you want to call it. The key thing is it's actually quite simple. And a lot of what I'm going to talk to you about tonight here, you've probably heard it before. The hard part is actually going and doing it. So that is the hard part of nutrition. But a few things here I want to go through. And what I want you to really think about is treat your car like a race car here that I have in front of us. So if you have a car like so, that car, before it gets onto the track, it has a full fuel tank. So that fuel tank is full to allow that car to go lap after lap after lap. And when the fuel tank starts to run low, it comes in for a pit stop to top up that fuel tank to allow it to finish out that race in a strong position. So what we need to do is think of ourselves like that car. Before we step onto the football pitch, whether it's training or a match, can we have a full fuel tank? And if we have a full fuel tank, we are going to be able to perform at a high intensity for the full 60, 70, 80 minutes, whatever it may be. And just like this car here, you put diesel into a petrol tank, it won't perform as we would like. Our bodies are exactly the same. So our fuel is food, but if we put the wrong fuel into us, we will not perform as we would like. In other words, if we eat the wrong types of foods, we can't go as we wish. So you might think we're eating and I'm doing X, Y, and Z, but are you eating the correct types of things that it's actually going to allow you to perform at your training sessions and at your match? So that's a really simple thing there, a simple analogy to think of. Am I fueling correctly for my sessions? And if I am, it's like that car, you can go on lap after lap after lap, and you'll be flying like those cars, really, really buzzing around the place. So that's the first thing, if we can get that concept of fueling the body correctly before we start. And then, as I mentioned, look at sports nutrition, it's quite simple, but the hard part is going and doing it. I want you to focus here on this side here. What we have is a pyramid. And this is what we need to do. You'll see the pyramid here is wide at the bottom. So what we need to do is focus here or start here with a healthy, balanced diet. So the grounding of all good athletes, all good players, to get that healthy, balanced diet correct, to have a really, really good foundation there. And then your performance nutrition, your sports nutrition comes after that. So what that might be is here, right, I have a match. What time do I need to eat at? I am in the gym. Do I need a little bit of extra protein? I'm injured. Do I need to alter what I'm doing? Like that all comes after this really, really good foundation of a healthy, balanced diet. And then you'll see there at the top, very narrow at the top, and it's narrow for a reason because we should not be relying on supplements. We may or may not need supplements, but regardless, it's a very narrow point. And what I want to get across to you here is that we are nearly led to believe that we need to be supplementing. You open social media, it's proteins all in your face, all these shakes and quick fix tablets and whatever, they're all in your face. But the reality is, if you're taking those and your diet's off, it's an absolute waste of time because the foundation is not there. So we cannot build without that good foundation here. So if you are taking X, Y, or Z, okay, fine. But can you look at, are we getting this here right first? Have we got the good foundation and build from here up? So I don't want to badmouth supplements. Supplements have a place for, I don't know who's on the call here with a huge range. For under 18s in particular, we wouldn't just recommend supplements from a sports performance perspective, basically because we want to get food first approach. And because the food first approach, and I'll talk you through it a little bit later on, there's loads of nutrients that we're going to get from food that we'll not get from supplements. Now, on that, if you've been prescribed a supplement from a GP, yeah, absolutely, you take that. If you're maybe eliminating food groups from the diet and missing out on certain nutrients, well, then we may need to supplement it with that as well. And perhaps that just takes a little bit of extra guidance. But I can't stress this enough that this is what we're after here, getting that healthy, balanced diet. And then we simply make a few tweaks in and around our training session, matches, etc. So this healthy, balanced diet, what have we got? It's this. And you've all seen this before, so it's the food pyramid. And if we've anybody from the north of Ireland, it's the Eat Well guide or the Eat Well plate they use in the north. Exact same principles. However, I like the food pyramid because it gives me numbers down here on the side and it can kind of keep us accountable. So anybody that's watching, feel free to take a picture of that and you can Google the food pyramid, you're going to get it. But I'm going to spend a lot of time talking about this because, as I said, it is the foundation of what we need to be doing. And if you take this as a pyramid again, so it's wider at the bottom, and wider meaning we need to be basing our foods and our nutrition on the foods at the bottom of this food pyramid. You're going to see there at the bottom, the biggest portion there is vegetables, salad, and fruit. And those foods are packed with colour, packed with vitamins and minerals. The next shelf up, we have our breads, rice, and pastas. And both of those shelves together, so both of them will give us carbohydrates. So that's actually the main macronutrient that we are going to get out of those bottom two foods is carbohydrate. And go back to that little car that I was talking about earlier, our fuel. Our main fuel for the body is carbohydrate. Okay, so when we're talking about filling up our fuel tank, these foods here at the bottom is what's going to fill up our fuel tank for us. Okay, and let's say here we've got our numbers to help guide us. So we've got fruit, veg, and salad there, and it's saying we should be taking 5 to 7 portions per day. I'd ask you to reflect maybe on your own habits. So it's now 10 to 8 in the evening. You've probably ate 80% of what you're going to eat today. So you might reflect on what you did eat today and count up how many times there was fruit, veg, or salad there. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to reflect on that. Everybody see where you're at. So think of breakfast, Lunch, dinner, your snacks, what weather, and count how many times fruit, veg, and salad were there. Now, I'm going to guess that if I was in the room with you and I asked for a show of hands, very few hands might go up. And the reason I say that is because I'm working with people all the time and I know what people are eating. And unfortunately, we're not eating enough of these foods here. And the reason we're not eating enough is simply because it's become the norm not to eat them. But what I want to talk to you here is, well, what's the consequences of not eating them? I've kind of already mentioned that they're packed with vitamins and minerals. Okay, so packed with vitamins and minerals. And go back to what I said earlier about being healthy and staying injury free. Like if we can get enough of these vitamins and minerals into us, we're going to be that little bit more healthier. And we're automatically going to be a better player on the back of that. Another thing, these vitamins and minerals here, they're going to help us to use all of these other nutrients here. And if I take protein, and I'll talk about protein now in a bit, everyone's obsessed with protein at the minute. But ultimately, you can't use your protein efficiently unless you have enough of these vitamins and minerals here. So again, that might be a trigger to some of you to say, right, geez, I need to get these in. And also, if we're not getting enough of these, we're not fit, we're chances are we're not filling up our fuel tank because these are going to fill them up. So a top tip, and if you're taking notes, you might write this down. Top tip is to try and get colour in every meal across the day. So what that might look like is I put berries on my cereal. That's one portion. I have a banana at small break at school or my break at work. There's another portion. I have a sandwich at lunchtime, but there's salad on it. So there's another portion. I have a snack in the evening and it includes an apple. So there's another portion. And then I sit down for my evening dinner and there's veg on the plate. There's another portion. So there's 5 portions. And I didn't say you need to cut out X, Y, or Z. All I said was simply add those foods in. So if you can get colour in each meal, you are well on your way to getting those 5 portions that we need, full of vitamins and minerals, plus you're filling up that fuel tank. So the next shelf, these I already mentioned them, carbohydrates, so both carbohydrates, but these ones here in particular are known as starchy carbs. And as much as both of these will fill up the fuel tank, the starchy carbs are going to do it a lot better for us. And I'll speak about those in a little bit. But what I want you to notice for now is just the colour of that shelf. So that shelf is brown, and it does say here we need to be getting whole meal portions of these foods. So we try to choose brown portions of those foods. So in other words, brown bread instead of white bread, brown pasta instead of white pasta, because they're higher in fibre and they're better for our gut. But from a performance perspective, we actually can better bank and store the energy that we get from the brown versions. And we can bank and store those and you'll use at a later date. So it can take up to 2 days to fill up our fuel tank. So the fuel tank that we have is in our muscles and in our liver, but we'll focus on the muscles. So our fuel tank is in the muscle. So when I eat these foods here, we can bank them into the muscle to use at a later date. So for example, breakfast in the morning, if it's higher in fibre, we can store that a little bit better to use later on at training in the evening. Or even the meals we eat today, and particularly if they're higher fibre, we can bank those to be used tomorrow. And I'm going to come back to carbohydrates a little bit later on and talk about the impact of these and how much we need to take and what's the consequences of not eating enough. But for now, what I'd really like you to remember is that what foods give us carbohydrates. Because if I'm saying you need to use these to fill up our fuel tank and eat carbs to fill up our fuel tank, if you don't know what gives you carbohydrates, it's very hard to go and eat them. So you have your breads, rices, and pastas, you have your fruit, veg, and salad. All carbohydrates, all needed to fill that fuel tank for us. I'm going to jump here now just to the next two shelves. We've got a blue shelf and we've got our yellow shelf. These provide us with protein. So the main macronutrient here is protein. And you'll see here the blue shelf is as much as it gives us protein, this dairy shelf is also high in calcium. It says here that we need to be getting 3 servings per day. But for the teenagers, and I know there's plenty of teenagers on the call here today, you actually need to be getting 5 portions of dairy per day. And the reason you need to get 5 portions per day of dairy per day is because of the calcium that we get in the dairy. And calcium is needed for strong bones, and you guys are still growing. So if you're growing, you are stretching out those bones, we need to make sure we're providing enough calcium to support that bone growth. On the flip side of that, what happens is you can only grow bone until you're about the age of 20, give or take. And when we get that little bit older, what happens is we start to lose bone. And when we start to lose bone, we potentially could have weaker bones. But to offset that weaker bones, what is recommended for you girls to do, and particularly the teenage girls here, is to hit those 5 portions of dairy every day. What that does, it means you're filling up your bone bank. Your bones are going to be as strong as possible so that when we get older and you start to lose bone, the impact won't be too bad. However, if we don't eat enough calcium on a daily basis now, your bone bank is only really going to be half full. And then when you get older and start to lose bone, you have potential to get weak bones. And some of you may know older people who fall and break a bone very easily. That's the impact of weak bones. But what we wanted to do is try and get you girls to be eating 5 portions per day. And for all the other women on the call, try and hit those 3 portions per day. So again, what does that look like? It might be that I'll have cheese on my sandwiches. I'll have a yogurt for with my lunch. I'll have a glass of milk with my dinner. So you're just adding in these portions wherever you can. And if I take milk there, for example, milk is the best sports drink you can take. So before and after exercise, it's one of the best things that you can drink. So the milk has got fluid in it, which is great. It's got protein, which is going to help us to adapt to the training, which I'll speak about later on. It also contains some carbohydrates, which has potential to fuel us. So milk is a great sports drink. And go back to earlier, we were talking about the supplements and how the supplements was very narrow at the top of that pyramid. And people probably think, oh, I need to be taking protein. I'll just give you an example from teams that I've worked with in the past. They don't get a protein shake after their gym, which a lot of people think they did. They got a milk. They got a protein milk post-exercise because it's proven that it is one of the best sports drinks that we can take. So again, to try and hit our portions here, let's get a glass of milk. No harm in another glass in and around our training sessions either. So protein, meat, fish, eggs, dairy. Again, I'm going to come back to this, but you need to know what gives us protein because it'll hopefully there'll be a trigger with you sometimes saying, oh, she said I need to eat protein after training. Well, if you don't know what it is, it's very hard to eat it. So we've got our dairy and we've got our meat, fish, eggs, nuts, beans, seeds, etc. And then if we jump again up to the top of the food pyramid, you'll see there we've got sweets, bars and crisps and they're labelled as foods and drinks high in fat and sugar. And you might also see there's a label saying not every day and another label saying maximum once or twice a week. So again, I would say if you reflected on your day today and what you ate, was there more than one portion? Was there one portion? Was there more than one portion from the top of the food pyramid? And again, from doing these talks and meeting people all the time, I nearly guarantee that I get most of the hands up if I was to ask in the group. And look at the biggest thing here, like those foods, yes, they're bad for us. We shouldn't be eating them all the time. They're high in fat, they're high in sugar. But ultimately, the biggest impact they have on your performance is, and what I find is that people eat these somewhere where they should be eating all of these. And the killer to your performance is the fact that you've missed out on the carbs and you've missed out on the protein. It's not the fact that you had the bag of crisps, or it's not the fact that you had the bar of chocolate. The fact is you missed out on these here, and that's the killer because we didn't get enough carbs, we didn't get enough protein. And I just want to show you what that looks like here. And this is a realistic view of some food diaries that I would get of players. So if you take here, we've got left and right, we've got 2 meal plans. You will see that there's a similar amount of food on each side, and both are equal in calories. So calories is a measure of energy. You don't need to worry too much about that, but they're a measure of energy, and both are equal in calories. In other words, they give us the same amount of energy. But and as I said, we've got similar amount of food there, but the types of food are completely different. If you look here on this side here, so it's my right, I don't know if it's your right, the right hand side anyway. We've got a sugary breakfast cereal, we've got a white bread sandwich, we've got crisps, we've got a fizzy drink, we've got biscuits, we've got processed food. So as much as you ate there and you say, oh, I got food, you got rubbish. Because where is the starchy carbs that's going to allow you to run up and down the field? Where is the protein that's going to allow you to adapt to the training? And where is the fruit and veg that's going to give me those micronutrients that I need to stay healthy? So as much as both of these have similar amount of food, they're completely different types of foods. And what we're getting on this side here, so the left, is I've got a starchy carb in each of those meals. I filled up that fuel tank. I've got protein in each of those meals there is going to allow me to adapt to the training and get stronger. And you can see there that my snacks are fruit and veg. So I've got the vitamins and minerals there that are going to help me to stay healthy. Plus those fruit and veg will help to fill up the fuel tank. And that's the thing. So for all of us on the call here, we're all eating. But what we need to do is reflect on what we're actually eating. And is it doing anything for my training? And this happens to me all the time. I get this question, Sharon, I'm flat out training, I'm eating loads, but I'm not getting any stronger. And then I have a look at it and say, well, of course you're not getting stronger. There's no protein here. There's a little bit of protein in the ham. There's no protein here. Your first dose of protein isn't coming to 6 o'clock in the day. How do you expect to get stronger? And I pose that to all of you here on the call. Like if you're after doing a block of training, you might have done 6 weeks of training and you haven't got any stronger, or you haven't got any faster, or you haven't got any fitter. Maybe it's time to zone in on what you're doing in terms of your nutrition. What are you eating away from the pitch? Is it allowing you to adapt to the training? And that's what we mentioned earlier. Are we eating enough to fuel our performance, eating enough to recover so that we can go back and repeat our trick again, i.e. push on and train? I just want to show you another example of that. So what we have there is a burger and chip. So a burger and chip, 930 calories. For the same 930 calories, you can eat all of this. And the key message I want to get across to you tonight, girls, is that as players, we have to eat loads. And once it's loads of the right stuff, i.e. those last 4 shelves of the food pyramid, it's all going to be put to good use. What do we get down here that we're not getting above? Well, look, we've got our carbs, so filled up my fuel tank, I can run up and down the pitch. We've got protein, I can adapt to the training. And you can see there's loads of colour there, so it's loads of vitamins and minerals plus extra fueling. So can't stress it enough, as players, we have to eat loads. And once it's loads of the good stuff and the right stuff, it'll all be put to good use to us. Now, look, don't get me wrong, if you want a burger and chip, take the burger and chip. But it can't be in there all the time, because if it's in there all the time, it's taking the place of something that we need for the training. And just another thing to point across or to get across, like 930 calories for that burger and chip. Like if you were to eat twice in that day, i.e. at 2 portions of burger and chip, you've nearly overate for that day. Versus I could be eating 10 of these things here. And that's the difference. The stuff at the bottom of the food pyramid tends to be lower in calories, but it's higher in the stuff that we need that actually is going to help us to train. So it's got the carbs and the protein that's going to do a lot of the work for us and help us to adapt to all the training that we're doing. So what I'm going to do now is, and I know I'm going through this maybe at some pace, but I'm going to zone in on a few key points here to help us along. So I'm going to zone in on our carbohydrates. So I've mentioned these already. So we've got our fruit and veg, which was the bottom shelf of the food pyramid. And then we've got our starchy carb, which is the breads, rice, and pastas, which was the next shelf up. And this is our main source of energy. And what we need to think about, well, why do we need energy? And we need energy to help us to concentrate, whether it be school, work, college. Sitting listening to me here at the minute is requiring probably a lot of energy. But that is energy that we need. So whatever we do across the day, it is requiring some sort of energy. Then think about that. On top of that, we are trying to train, and I put perform there. And the reason I put perform is because we can all go to train and be paddy last, But if you actually want to push on a training, you need to make sure you're eating a sufficient amount of these foods here. And what does it look like, or how do I know if I'm not eating enough of these foods here? Like, how do I know? Well, your body will tell you. If you go to training and you've got heavy, tired legs, it's a sign that you haven't ate enough of these foods here. So you simply reflect and say, oh my God, I didn't get enough. I was so tired. I couldn't push on in training. I need to make sure the next day that I have an extra potato at dinner or whatever the case may be. So your body will tell you. We also need then this energy, this carbohydrates to help us to grow. And I know there's a range of people on the call here. And if I take the teenagers here in particular, the teenagers, you guys are stretching out. If you want to maximize your ability to stretch out, you need to ensure that you're eating enough of these foods. And you need to ensure that you have enough for school, you have enough for your part-time job, you have enough then to go to training, and then you have to have some left over to grow. And if I take any of the older players on the call here, we're all trying to grow as well. Because if you're in the gym and maybe doing some sort of strength and conditioning, you're trying to build muscle. And if we want to build muscle, i.e., grow muscle, you still need to have leftover energy at the end of the day. So what we need to do is, well, can we get enough of these foods in here to try and maximize this here? But if we're not eating enough of these here, we're not maximizing out on this. And how much do we need? Okay, and I'm going to keep this very, very simple. I could give you specific numbers, whatever, but I'm going to keep it simple. We base our meals on these foods here. So as we go throughout the day, we need to be basing our meals on these foods here and then have colour in each plate. Okay, so what that might look like is porridge in the morning. I've ticked this box. It might look like a sandwich at lunchtime. I've ticked this box, and I've pasta in the evening for the dinner. I've ticked that box. So I've based my meals on those foods here. I'll put veg in with my pasta. I'll put salad on my sandwich. I'll put fruit into my porridge in the morning. I've ticked that box to get enough colour on the plate. And that there is going to keep you right. And that's nearly gonna, I can nearly guarantee you that's going to have you eaten enough. Okay. Now, for any of the older players on the call, maybe that want to know, well, how much do I actually need? You're going to need a minimum of 3 grams of carbohydrates for every kilogram that you weigh. And that gets bigger then on a training day or a match day. It could be up closer to 6 grams of carbohydrates for every kilogram that you weigh. And I know that's quite complicated, but if I weigh 50 kilos, for example, and I need 6 grams, 6 fives are 30, that means I need 300 grams of carbohydrate per day. And your only way of getting them is actually by doing this here, basing your meals on these foods and having colour on each plate. So that's the thing there to go after. Some people might want the specific numbers, but regardless, you're doing this, basing your meals on these foods and having colour on each plate. And I'll show you some examples now shortly. I want to go into my protein here. So protein is in your dairy and it's in your meat, fish, eggs, nuts, beans, seeds, etc. And protein is the building block of all body tissues. So skin, hair, nails, muscles, bones, they're all made up of protein. So with that, well, why do we need some? Why do we need to eat it? Well, we need to support our growth and development. Because if every body tissue is made up of protein, we need to make sure we're eating enough of it to allow us to stretch out, to allow us to grow on the back of the training sessions that we're doing. You must ensure that you're eating those foods there to allow you to maximize that. We also need that protein to help us to increase the size of our muscle and increase that muscle tone. So I don't want any girl or woman on the call here to be thinking, I don't want to be muscular. Look, women are not built to be largely muscular. But we do need to have muscle. We need to have that muscle tone. We still need to have big muscles to allow us to perform, because it is known that strength helps us with speed and power on the pitch. It is also known that that strength is going to help us to be less likely to get injured. So if we're in the gym, or maybe we're doing some conditioning at home, we might be doing body weight exercises at home. The idea of those is to allow you to increase the size and strength of that muscle. And if you are doing that training, you need to be ensuring that you're eating these protein foods to allow you to do that, to allow that muscle to change. Muscle is a big ball of protein. So I'll say that again. Muscle is a big ball of protein. And if we want to change that muscle, we must ensure we're eating enough protein to allow it to change. So training, fantastic. Training's going to switch the body on to say, yeah, change. But it will not change unless the protein foods follow. And again, I'll say that some of you will have done a block of training and you're finding I'm not adapting, I haven't got any stronger. Well, perhaps again, it's time to look at the diet and are we eating enough protein foods to support that growth that we're looking. And the other thing then that we're looking for protein or why we need it is to help us to recover after training sessions. So every time we train, whether it's a pitch session or a gym session, we will actually damage our muscles. So we will damage them. And go back to what I said earlier, muscle is made up of protein. So if we're damaging the muscles, well, then we need to make sure that we are eating enough protein to help that damage to repair. So to recover after a session, let's ensure that we are getting enough protein across the day and after our sessions to help with that. And what does that look like if I'm not eating enough? So what happens is I've trained this evening. I didn't get enough protein. Okay, that's fine. I train again Friday evening. Didn't get enough protein. Okay. I train again Sunday. Didn't get enough. So I just didn't recover properly. Next Tuesday, I'm injured. And you're saying, well, how the hell am I injured? Perhaps we're injured because we haven't recovered from all the previous sessions that went before us. And what we need to do to help that recovery, as I said, is to eat the protein. So all of these things that are listed here, if we're not eating enough of these foods over here, these are going to be impacted. We cannot maximize out on all of these if we're not eating enough of these foods here. And how do I know if I'm eating enough? So a good guide is just to have some protein at every meal. Okay. And I'm going to give you some examples now shortly of how we can get protein into each of our meals across the day. And again, for somebody who maybe the older players who are trying to zone in on this to get the small percentages, a good guide for us is to have about 20 grams of protein at each meal across the day. And another guide for us is to have between 1.6 grams and 2 grams of protein for every kilogram that we weigh. And I know that's very specific, so I'll just repeat it again. And it's really for the older players who are looking for that small percentage. So 1.6 to 2 grams of protein every day. 1.6 to 2 grams per kilogram of protein per day. So whatever you weigh, multiply it by 2, and that's the max protein that you need on a daily basis. And then we space it out evenly with minimum 20 grams at each sitting. And I'll just show you some examples now of how we can piece this together. And I don't want people to get too bogged down by the numbers. What I want you to get bogged down by is the pattern of adding these foods in. If we take our fruit and veg and our carbs, we have our proteins. What we need to do is recognize those fruit and veg and carbs as my running foods. That's what gives me the energy. And the ones on the other side here, think of those as my muscle building foods. And then we go 1, 2, 3. Can I include those in each meal? So as you go throughout the day, can I tick this box, this, and this in each meal? And you will not be too far away. So forget about the numbers I'm after giving. Try and build these in and you'll not be too far away from where you need to be. It's also really important that we get a pattern of eating every couple of hours. And the reason we need to get that pattern is because we want to feed the body with the nutrients that it needs. And go back to what I said earlier, if we're consistent with our training and then we're consistently feeding the body the nutrients that it needs, how can it not change? How can it not, the body composition not come to where we need to be? How can your performance not increase? It can't but increase. So what we want is try and get this nice pattern. And I've put this together here. May suit some people, may not. But we've got breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, supper. And we all should be working towards eating that amount of times per day. So 3 main meals, or 4 even, but a main meal, a main meal, and a main meal with snacks in between. All of us are going after that. And what we're eating at those times is we're ticking those boxes: carbs, protein, and colour. Let's have a look at it. Porridge in the morning is my carbs. It's made up of milk, which is protein. I add extra nuts and seeds, which is going to give me an extra little bit of protein. I've added my color there with the fruit. Chicken salad sandwich. My chicken is the protein. The salad is the color. The sandwich is the carbs. Potatoes, carbs, meat, protein, veg is color. My snacks there are something similar. They're made up of the same things. So if I can tick the boxes, carbs, protein, and color, in each of the meals as I go throughout the day, you are not going to be too far away from where you need to be, regardless of those numbers that I've mentioned. And what I want to say to you here and now is this is what needs to be done every day. So it's not a case that, oh, I have a match tomorrow, I'm going to eat really well. What we need to be thinking of is, well, all the gains are got in training. So if I can eat this and be fueled for training, it means that I can push on in training, which means my fitness levels can increase. And if I can do that today, and I can do it the next day, and I can do it the next day, fitness levels go through the roof. So the gains are got in training, so we need to try and eat this to be ready for training. Some examples of how this can go wrong. You go out the door without breakfast. There's an opportunity missed in the morning where I'm not going to get enough of my carbs and proteins. Probably 300 or 400 calories there that I've missed. You're going to chase them for the day. And what if I have a bar of chocolate here at my small break? But if you had that bar of chocolate, there's a window missed to get a little bit of protein and carbs in. And what if I had a plate of chips here for lunch? Okay, a plate of chips is fine, they were delicious, but Jesus, I missed out on the carbs and the protein that I needed. And that's the impact. And it's fine if we miss it once, or it's fine if there's gaps there every so often. But if there's gaps there all the time, then you're going to question, well, Jesus, I can see now why I'm not pushing on in the training. And that's the big thing there. We need to work towards this. And what I'd say to you again is listen to your body. How do I know if this is too much for me or too little for me? Your body will tell you. If you are doing this, you've worked towards a pattern, something similar to this, you've ticked off carbs, protein, and color in each of your meals, and yet you still feel tired, well, then you need to eat more. If you're doing this and you feel like I'm not adapting to the training, well, then you need to eat more. If you're doing this and you're constantly tired and need a nap all the time, you need to eat a little bit more. Or if you've worked towards this and you feel like you've put on a little bit of fat mass, well, then maybe we need to scale it back. Okay. So listen to your body. It will absolutely tell you what needs to happen. And on that, this is zoning in on listening to our bodies. You're going to see here, there's a star here. And I said at the beginning, if we eat like a Gaelic footballer and train like a Gaelic footballer, everything will look after itself. You have that here, the gold star. I'm after saying there, well, how do I know if I'm eating too much or too little? If we're eating too much, or if we're eating the wrong types of foods, go back to that burger and chip that I had earlier. If it's constantly in there, chances are it's going to skew your calories in the wrong direction. So if we're constantly eating the wrong types of foods, what might happen is it might send us this way. So increased fat stores, which is not what we want. So we're looking to pin ourselves here. So be conscious, have I moved into this? Listening to your body. But what I want to zone in on, which is the most common thing that we're seeing with players, is that we're not eating enough. There's relative energy deficiency in sport, which is known as REDS. So it is a condition now whereby we know that players do not eat enough, male and female players, and teenagers and adults alike. So it can affect everybody. So this is not eating enough food to support the training that we're doing. And I can't stress this enough to the players on the call here. You must listen to your body. If you are not adapting to the training, so if you're doing the training sessions and you feel you're not getting fitter, you're not getting stronger, you're not getting faster, you need to consider, am I eating enough? Am I deficient in the energy that is needed? If we are struggling to recover between sessions, if we're constantly picking up niggles and injuries, again, we need to look, are we eating enough to support all the training that we're doing? Something that's a hot topic at the moment is the menstrual disturbances. If any of the women and girls on the call here, if you are not getting a monthly period, so if you've crossed over and you have got your period first off, and now you're starting to miss periods, or your period has disappeared for a number of months in a row, that is a sure sign that you are not giving your body the energy that it needs. And you need to listen to that. Like, you might think, oh, it's great, I'm missing a period, because we all know it's a hassle. But if you're missing the period, it's not a good thing. Okay, so you need to listen to your body, as I said, and then you need to rectify it. And that's a thing that we need to be aware of is, well, am I eating enough? Okay. And if it's gone chronic and we've missed the menstrual cycle for a long period of time, it's probably no harm in reaching out to somebody like myself, a sports nutritionist or a dietitian, to help to rectify that. But that is a sure sign that we are not feeding our body and giving our body enough of the foods that's needed. And just a wee bit of science behind it is that if we don't give the body enough energy, it starts to shut down some systems. And the menstrual cycle tends to be one of those systems that's the first one to shut off. Okay. So if we're not giving the body enough and it's starting to shut off, well, that's a sign that, you know what, I need to look into my habits and what am I actually doing here. Okay. But as I said, listen to your body and you adapt. And there's no right or wrong thing to do. You start to build in these foods that I'm after mentioning. If we're injured, for example, or constantly been injured, you simply zone in to the nutrition guidelines that I'm after giving you. So I'm going to come back to this here. This is just examples of foods from players that I've worked with in the past. Okay, I just want to show you this. We have the pattern: breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, supper. You're building towards that. And look at the foods that they're eating here. We've got the porridge, which is our carbs. We've got the colour there with the berries. And we've got loads of protein in our yogurt, peanut butter, and our linseed. Look at this. We've got our brown wrap, which is our carbs. We've got the chicken, which is the protein. We've got the salad, which is the colour. We've the glass of milk there. The same pattern here. Carbs, protein, and colour is included. So what I suggest you do, and I've said this already, but you're trying to get towards that pattern. And I'm not saying you need to eat these exact foods. What I'm suggesting you do is that you eat carbs, protein, and colour. So if you don't like porridge, that's absolutely fine. Let's have toast. If you don't like a wrap, that's absolutely fine. Let's have a sandwich. If you don't like chicken, that's absolutely fine. Let's have some meat or fish. But you're trying to include those foods. And it's your choice, but you're ticking them off. And portion sizes, again, there, look at some of those portion sizes might be too big. You adjust. So if you're eating this, and that is quite a big portion size there, but if you eat that and you're too full and you can't eat again for another 6 hours, we just make that a little bit smaller to allow us to get some food in 2 to 3 hours later. So no more than 3 hours without feeding, because what we want to do is give the body the nutrients that it needs every couple of hours. And as I said earlier, this is the default. We default back to this because, look, we're training far more than we're playing matches. So we want to have this in there every day, because most of us are training. You probably don't get 1 or 2 days between training sessions. So that has to be the default. But then what do I do if I have a training session or a match? What do I need to change? To be honest, you don't need to change too much. But try, if we can, get a full balanced meal 3 hours before that session. Okay. So what do I go after? Well, if I said earlier carbs is our main source of energy, well, you need to zone in on the carbs here. That could be toast, that could be a roll, that could be rice, that could be spaghetti. You choose whatever sits well with you. And then don't miss the opportunity to get the other nutrients in there, the protein, the colours there as well. Now, on that, I know that it's not always realistic to eat 3 hours beforehand. If we could be racing from school to get to homework club, out to training, we might have a match at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning and nobody's getting up 3 hours before that match to eat. That's perfectly fine. And if we don't have that window to get that big meal in and we have a shorter time, you simply just eat a smaller amount. Because all we're doing is this last meal is just the final one to top us up. Okay, because we've done the work. We're after eating really well all day today and all day yesterday. We've done the work. The last meal is just to top us up. So if we only eat a smaller amount, that's absolutely perfect. Or we choose something that will be digested a little bit easier. Go back to what I said earlier, carbs is our main source of energy. So as long as we're choosing carbs, we're not going to be too far away. Could be a smoothie, could be a yogurt, could be cornflakes, it could be toast. It's going to do a job for us because it's carbs. If I take cornflakes there, cornflakes is a high sugar cereal. Is it the best breakfast we can take every day? No, but it will do a job for us before a match or a training session because it gives us carbs that will be digested very, very easy. So it will do a job for us. So if needs must, perfect. Because at this point, the last meal before a training or a match, we just want to make sure that fuel tank is full to allow us to go. And that cornflakes there is going to do that for us. In terms of drinks, do I need to do anything fancy? No, we don't. I mentioned milk earlier is the best sports drink, but water, we need to be sipping away at the water between our meals, and I'm going to zone in on the hydration in a little bit here. But we need to just be sipping away at the water across the day, and that's going to keep us right. In terms of sports drinks, energy drinks, caffeine drinks, let's try and stay away from them. The reason being is because, and particularly the caffeine drinks, they're containing stuff that we don't really need to be putting into our body. And generally, what I'm finding is more and more young people taking the caffeine drinks and they say, oh, I need it. But if you need it, that's a sure sign that you're not eating the correct types of foods. So if you need it, go and correct the diet to give the body what it needs. So go back to the carbs, to the protein, give the body what it needs. And again, people saying to me, players saying to me, oh, I need that caffeine drink. And then I say, did you have breakfast? No. Well, of course you need it. Okay, so let's go back and try and correct the source of the issue first off. And then post training, a couple of things that we need to go after. Let's rehydrate to get the fluids into us. That's going to get us nice and nice watery blood that's going to help to get the nutrients around the body. We need to get carbs into us to help to get the energy back into the muscle. The reason being is because our next session's coming nice and quick. Said earlier, it can take 2 days to fill up the fuel tank. So let's get the carbs in, start that refueling process for the next day. And then we need to rebuild with protein. Okay, so get that protein in because we're after damaging the muscle during that session. So we need to get the protein in to help to repair that damage and also to promote adaptation, i.e., can the body change on the back of the session that we're after doing? It needs the protein to allow us to do that. So ideally, try and get food into us ASAP after the session. You're just going to recover quicker if we can. And not the end of the world if we miss it. But again, if we're going after those 1%, let's try and tick off that box. And what do I eat? You now know that carbs is my running food. So if I'm on the pitch, get my carbs in with some protein. If I'm in the gym or doing some strength and conditioning, body weight conditioning at home, focus in on protein with some carbs. And look at nothing fancy here. Really, really simple options, but they're ticking the boxes. Carbs, protein, colour. My spaghetti is the carbs. The bolognese has got the protein. Eggs is protein. Toast is carbs. So really, really simple. And there's my milk there as a snack if I only have the opportunity to eat a snack post-training. So last thing now I just want to pick up on is dehydration and being hydrated. So dehydration is that loss of body water. And if we're losing body water, which we all do through sweating and urination, etc., you'll see there we have potential to fall into being dehydrated. And on the left-hand side there of the screen, you've got many negative effects of being dehydrated. And if I was to ask you, do you want any of those when you're on the pitch, you would say no. So if we want to try and avoid them, we need to drink enough fluids to offset our dehydration to keep us in a hydrated state. And you'll commonly hear that we need to drink 6 to 8 glasses of water a day or 2 litres of water per day. A good guide for us all is simply to look at the colour of our urine when we go to the toilet and make sure we're sitting somewhere here. Okay, so we want it to be pale yellow to see through. And for some people, that might take 3 litres. For others, it might only take 1.5 litres. But it's up to you to try and keep the water bottle to hand, keep sipping away, and get yourself into this state here, which means you're not going to get into this state here of being dehydrated. And then a few things then just from a player's perspective. So I know I'm after going through a lot, and I can't believe it's nearly half 8 already, but I'm after going through a lot there. But from a player's perspective, what do we do? And I said at the beginning that most of this information, it's easy to understand, and you've probably heard it before, but the hard part is actually going and doing it. So what we need to do is, well, plan out your day, get the food in, and then get it sorted out, get it cooked. So if we know I'm racing from work or I'm racing from school to homework club and straight to training, well, do I need to take an extra lunch with me? And if I don't do a shop at the weekend and I open the cupboards on Sunday evening to make the lunch for Monday and there's nothing in the presses, Monday's out the window. It's a write-off. And if I know Monday and Tuesday I'm late home from work and I won't get a chance to make the dinner, well, maybe I need to batch cook and I need to make it Sunday evening to make a couple of days in advance. So you have to plan in advance and know where you're at and put things in place to ensure that we can look after the nutrition. Bringing a lunchbox here. So it happens that it's children at school, oh, the canteen at school is crap. So bring a lunchbox. So it's up to you. If you know that it's not great or on a particular day the food isn't wonderful in it, that's not an excuse. You then go and bring the lunchbox with you. Carbs, protein, and colour, they're ticked off. Keep the water bottle to hand, as I said, just to make sure we're stay hydrated. And then, as much as I'm after talking loads, try and maybe pick 1 or 2 things to nail this week, 1 or 2 things to add in next week. So from tomorrow onwards, you might say, I'm going to have breakfast every day. And then next week, you're going to say, I'm going to have veg with my dinner every day. And the following week, you bed in something else. So try and add one thing at a time. It's more likely to stick for you. And that's what we want. We want it to become a lifestyle change. We want it to be easy for it to stick. Might be no harm writing out your food diary, comparing it to the food pyramid, and you might say, oh, Jesus, I'm way off. Only got 3 portions of veg, fruit and veg, and I should have had 5. Or you might say, oh my God, I was training at 6 o'clock today and I didn't eat from 1 o'clock. Was it any wonder I was tired? So sometimes when you write it down, you're able to see those gaps. And then I'm going to just touch on sleep. So as much as sleep isn't really a nutrition thing, when we're asleep, a lot of our growth and recovery happens. So what we need to do is to make sure we are asleep. And if we actually can go to bed with a supper, so I mentioned having a supper earlier. If we have supper, what we're doing is we're going to bed with nutrients in the system. And if all that growth and recovery is happening at night time, you're going to maximize it if we have the nutrients in the system. And we're looking for 9 hours. Okay, any player, athlete, anybody that's serious about their performance is looking for 9 hours. But regardless if we're serious about a performance or not, teenagers and teenage players need to be getting that 9 hours to help them to adapt and grow and recover, etc. From a coach's perspective, if you're on the call, brilliant. You're zoned in, you're interested in your nutrition. But the most simplest thing that you can do when you're working with a group of girls is highlight that key message. Food is our fuel. And it's a really simple thing, but you could be saying at the end of a training session, that was a really, really tough training session. Make sure you get something into you now before you go to bed. Or in the lead into a match, you might just encourage to say, look, we know we have a tough match coming up at the weekend. Make sure you eat plenty across the day beforehand or whatever. Okay. And then you might need to get somebody like myself in or zone in on a role model in your club. So you might have a senior player and say, oh, did you see such and such going in there with the water bottle? Or maybe get them to come down to training and have a chat to the players, whatever the case may be. But really important that the coaches loving that you're here, but then trying to give some key messages across when you are working with the players as well. And then you'll be delighted to know we're here at the end. But I can't stress it enough. If we have this here, eating a healthy, balanced diet, that's going to take you so far. So getting that good habits bedded in, that comes second nature. It's a lifestyle thing. We get that bedded in. And then we tweak a few things in and around the training. But this is what it leads to here is performance, improved performance. How could it not? So, and I mentioned this already, but you consistent with your training, you're consistent with your nutrition. This can't but go through the roof here. So thank you very much, 8:33. But thank you very much. Happy to take any questions if you have any questions.
Sharon, thank you so much. I wrote loads of notes there myself of things to improve on, and we different tips. And I think as I think you mentioned at the start, with nutrition, it's often stuff in some ways you've heard before, but I always think it's a great point to get a reminder on it. Especially at this stage of the season, many people either coming into the training period or probably starting to come in towards matches as well. So. Thank you so much for that. Guys, if there are any questions there, the chat function is open and the Q&A is open. I can see somebody said that their daughters missed the session. Is there any way to get it for after tonight? So yeah, tonight's session has been recorded and it will go up on the LGFA YouTube channel over the next couple of days, and that will probably go out as well over social media. So if you keep an eye on either the YouTube or the social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or X as it's now known, over the next couple of days, that'll go out over there. If we have any questions for Sharon, I'll just stop the recording there.